We also see gaps from a financial inclusion perspective. So the Institute is measuring many different access to financial help challenges, as well as other financial stressors and indicators for Canadians. And what we see is that, for example, while 9% of the population report they couldn't get the financial support or advice that they needed over the past 12 months, the numbers are much higher for those, again, who are more financially vulnerable. So 21% of extremely vulnerable Canadians report that they're not able to get the financial support or advice they need. We see from our data that 59% of Indigenous Canadians are facing financial hardship. 31% of them are extremely vulnerable, and they're very, very important segment to us. So what we see from just the last year is that they have a mean financial resilience score of 42.01, so better than some of the other segments, but they're still very challenged in a number of different ways. So just a few insights here. You can see that they have, nearly half of them have a zero or negative savings rate, for example. 38% of Indigenous Canadians are unable to get or afford the food they need. We're tracking housing insecurity, food insecurity, and many other stresses and challenges, and those numbers are very concerning to us. Financial stress is also negatively impacting the mental health of 80% of Indigenous Canadians, much higher than for Canadians overall. And we do see them being quite debt stressed and challenged in terms of access to affordable credit, etc., which is having an impact on more Indigenous Canadians taking out those expensive payday loans or installment loans compared to the population, as we discussed. Indigenous Canadians, they're very proactive in terms of wanting to improve their financial health and resilience. 56% of them have taken steps to improve their financial literacy specifically over the past 12 months, which is fantastic. But we also see that nearly a third of them report that they don't have the financial literacy to manage their household finances well. And so this is higher than for Canadians overall, and does highlight the importance of relevant tailored financial literacy and financial resilience programs for Indigenous Canadians based on meeting their unique needs and their unique stressors. We also see them as being more challenged in terms of accessing different financial support and advice. So, for example, 19% of them report that they were not able to get the support or advice they needed over the last year. So very important population needing better support. From our data, we do not see a causal relationship between access to different types of financial help support and improved financial resilience. But what we do think, and what we can see from the data, is that households that were able to access different types of support have significantly higher mean financial resilience scores. So the financial resilience of low-income Canadians, this is a population that, again, we've been collaborating and partnering with Prosper Canada, amazing partner organization that does incredible work to support the financial health and resilience of low-income Canadians specifically, as well as other Canadians. And so we have been doing deep dive analytics on low-income Canadians for a couple of years now. And this data is based on a much larger boost sample of just 1,500 Canadians, low-income Canadians, and those people are defined as those with a household income under 25,000 or people with household income under 50,000, excluding single-person households, is that, again, their financial resilience has decreased, and we now see 41% of the population are extremely vulnerable, which is up from 34% a year ago. And again, just going back to that intersectional analysis, when you look at a low-income person who has other barriers or other financial stressors, their financial vulnerability is ever more increased. So, for example, here, if you compare a male with a low income who has a mean financial resilience score of 37.9 based on the June 2022 index, with 41% of those folks experiencing extremely vulnerable. That's not good. But when you look at a male low income who is a renter, who's also struggling with their debt manageability, significantly more challenged. In fact, that person or that household would be defined as extremely vulnerable as opposed to financially vulnerable, with a mean score that is significantly lower at 24.72, and 86% of those folks experiencing hardship. So we see the intersectionality aspect as very important for the Institute, particularly to provide more nuanced insights for organizations wanting to support these organizations, and obviously qualitative work and insights from these people themselves around their challenges, gaps, and opportunities are very, very important. Going back to the access issue, low-income Canadians are much more challenged than those Canadians overall, in terms of accessing financial services and support, help in managing debt, etc. And what we see again is that low-income Canadians that were able to access this support have significantly higher mean financial resilience scores. So, for example, those who were able to access financial help programs or services had a score of 39.06 on the right-hand side, compared to 24.12 of people who were not able to access support. Firstly, financial vulnerability and also financial stress is a really mainstream issue in Canada. It's a mainstream issue, it's a growing issue, particularly given the challenging macroeconomic environment. The Institute is expecting the mean financial resilience score of Canadians to be lower, to drop in the next index, given what we're seeing with the macroeconomic environment and the cost of living inflation. And that's despite people working very hard from a behavioral perspective to maintain or improve their financial resilience. So in our opinion, it's problematic from a mainstream perspective and from middle-class Canadians and those with higher household incomes, but it's also particularly a problem for those who are more financially vulnerable and or underserved. And so we strongly believe that an increased focus on consumers' financial resilience is important, which is why we've created the Institute. So secondly, the index very powerfully shines a light on a number of financial resilience gaps, which I've tried to share with you and highlight quickly today. But we see gaps in terms of more financially vulnerable populations experiencing higher levels of financial stress, higher levels of financial hardship. We see gaps in terms of access to support and relevant help. And from a longitudinal perspective, we do see that the people that are able to adjust their behaviors can notably and significantly improve their financial resilience. And so utilizing data and also other partnerships, it's really important to provide more targeted investments and support for people based on their needs and stressors. And we see the opportunities for much more targeted support going forward. And then measurement of improved financial resilience of Canadians overall and of specific populations over time, as well as measurement by organizations who are committed to this of the extent to which they are helping to move the dial on improved financial resilience for their customers or employees, and then measurement on their service delivery performance in terms of the extent to which their customers and those who are more financially vulnerable rate them for financial wellness delivery support, which is something that we're tracking from an independent perspective. People are making changes in their life to improve their financial resilience, but we can't put people into one bucket. Things change over time, and quantitative and qualitative data insights can help uncover and validate the unique needs, pain points, and also behaviors of these populations. And then we can measure and track how specific offerings or interventions can potentially impact financial resilience outcomes and or improve the financial well-being of specific populations. So number 4, financial resilience mobility is proven. We've tracked this a number of times through the longitudinal analysis, which we first started conducting in 2020. So, you know, the good news story is that the majority of Canadians do want to better understand their financial resilience and how they can improve it. And what we see is that Canadians tracked longitudinally that adjust their behaviors, access support and social capital do make notable differences and can move upwards in terms of their financial resilience sort of score segment. So behavior change counts, it's critical. That said, we have to recognize that many of the households that we have touched on today are facing systemic barriers. And that financial inclusion is a challenge for Canadians overall, but also particularly for these more financially vulnerable populations. So more support is needed. Fifthly, to improve financial empowerment and ultimately financial resilience, relevant programs and support are critical. And we see from our data that Canadians that do access this help have significantly higher levels of financial resilience. We would like to do more analytics to see if there is more of a causal relationship and or if certain different types of support have more of an impact and or different behaviors. But we do see improved financial resilience outcomes. And we see this for Canadians overall, as well as for those who are more financially vulnerable. We also see that there's positive impacts on overall well-being for those who have higher financial resilience. So lastly, in our opinion, financial institutions, policymakers, not-for-profits, employers, and many other organizations all have a very important role to play in improving the financial health, resilience, and well-being of Canadians through innovation, through cross-sector knowledge sharing, through adjusting policies, inventing new programs and services. And in our opinion, data-driven, evidence-based decisions are key, as well as including customers and those who are more financially vulnerable in the design process, testing and learning, and thinking of this as a long-term journey.
How do you conceptualize intersectionality to capture different groups and factors? For example, single mom, low income, Indigenous, etc.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is an evolution, this work, and I think really we're just at the beginning of the journey as an institute around leveraging the sophistication of the index to look at household financial vulnerability from an intersectional perspective. But I think what you've seen just from the couple of snippets that I shared today is that intersectionality is critical and it can have an enormous difference. So if I'm not just a female, that I'm a female single mum who's also struggling with my debt levels and a renter, for example, my household financial vulnerability is going to be very different from just a female single mum on her own. So I think we see intersectionality as really critical and something that we want to collaborate with partners and lever other data as well to sort of bring in those more nuanced views around subsegments of the population, and also adjusting for the fact that people can change and they can move forward, and they can be in one segment one year and not necessarily in the same segment exactly the same the next year after that. So just a couple of calls to action before we go into the Q&A. Please feel free to download and share the 2 reports which are available on the website. You'll see that there are many other reports there on the website as well. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly or to anyone else within the team to ask questions. We are here to help. We would love to also connect with you if you have any questions just about the Institute or impact goals, membership opportunities, or opportunities to collaborate for impact. We would love to hear from you. and very much want to recognize the amazing work and important work and partnerships of all the people on this line who are all doing incredible things to help build an equitable, inclusive and resilient Canada. So I hope this data that we've shared provides a call to action to you to continue your incredibly important work, given that the need is growing and it's more critical than ever.